Good morning, Sunday morning intensifies. How's it going, chat? I'm streaming at all these ridiculous hours because once you have a kid, it's very difficult to have a normal sleeping schedule. I mean, I already had a bad sleeping schedule because I'm a streamer, and it's kind of like living with jet lag nonstop. But now that you have a baby and it cries during the night and it wakes me up, yeah, it's making my sleeping schedule out of whack. Like I get a couple of hours here and there, and other than that, I'm awake. So doing a stream, getting a little bit of activity going, it's keeping me awake. So throwing a phone is different. Oh my goodness, people are already starting. Right, throwing a phone is different than punching someone in the face. It's assault, but to a lesser degree. Yeah. So basically, this is what it seems that has happened. Right, this is what has transpired with Styx. He may have thrown a phone at the lady, which is not nice. It's not good. But it's not as bad as it could be, right? Because like this is what people thought. It's like, did he put hands on her? Did he throw her down the stairs? It's like, yeah, no, he didn't. He did throw a phone though, which yeah, I mean, not a good look. But the question is, are people going to judge? Right? This is something that I've been asked. It's like, what do you think will happen? I don't know why people ask me this. Do you know how wise I feel when I have people coming up into my DMs? It's like, what do you think will happen? It's like I'm an expert. I'm a fact checker hired by the Biden administration, right? What kind of phone? Well, clearly not a Nokia. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was a Nokia. I mean, it did do some damage, right? And you need to see if it broke or not. Like, if the phone didn't break, maybe it was a Nokia. But that thing is like the hammer of Thor, so... I mean, if it was a Nokia, that's attempted murder, right? So anyway, Legal Mindset explained the law of domestic abuse, and it includes throwing the phone. I mean, yeah, obviously. Usually, like, throwing shit is a woman thing. And I say this because when I was at the hospital, you realize that, oh, actually, domestic abuse is not something that only men do. It usually goes unreported for women. Men don't really like to say that they got battered by their wives. And the question is like, well, how are women doing domestic abuse, right? Because like usually they're much smaller than the men. So well, they throw stuff. Like this is usually how women do domestic abuse. Sometimes they throw things that are incredibly unpleasant, like hot cooking oil. Like literally, there were several cases that I saw in the hospital. Like I don't know the percentage of it, because like obviously being in the hospital, you just see the people that are wounded coming up. So I don't have like the total number of women in my country versus like how many do this. But like they would take something from the stove, the cooking pan, the boiling water, and they would just throw it. I don't know how they do it without getting themselves injured, because it sounds incredibly painful. I don't know what the fuck is going through their head. They're usually coping. It's like, oh yes, but he is abusive, so therefore I have a right. Like that is the justification, and I'm pretty sure like society justifies it as well. It's like, well, he was abusive, and she just couldn't take it anymore. She just couldn't take it. And it's like, while I understand that if he is abusive, that is not excusable, but surely there are different ways at doing it than to throw cooking oil on him. I'm just saying, you know. So, yeah, no, it's something that women do. They throw stuff. Obviously, in the worst cases, as I mentioned, they throw cooking oil and stuff. But, like, they usually throw plates. They throw the vase or vase, depending where your pronunciation, where you are, your pronunciation may be different. They don't throw knives, though. Or maybe if they do, they don't hit. But yeah, throwing shit is what women do. So this is what Styx did. He threw the stuff. And she didn't dodge, so therefore he's in jail. I don't know if this is Stolas's work, because... No, maybe it is. Maybe Stolas prevented her from dodging, you know? Like, maybe Stolas just appeared in the last second and she didn't dodge. I seen a woman throw a puppy. Oh my god, I have seen women use a child as a melee weapon. It's like, in Dungeons and Dragons, you know, improvised weapons, and you can use a... Like, I have seen women using children. this is actually quite often. Like, you get it on TV, and I saw clips of it on Twitter, right? Like, you'd have two women arguing, and there's like one of them is a mother, and they're like 2-year-old, 3-year-old is next to them, and they literally pick up the 2-year-old and they use the 2-year-old as a weapon. Come on, like, you guys must have seen it. It was on Twitter. It was viral, but I guess it was a couple of years ago. So this is before like terms of service came up. Yeah, like, I mean, it was shocking, but like, what can you do? It's the internet. You get to see a lot of shit, you know? So, I think like the reason they do it is that it stupefies the other woman, right? Like, she's like, what the fuck is going on? And like, she doesn't even have time to react. So maybe that's why they use the weapon. Because it's not very effective. Like, I can't imagine it hurts. Like, it probably hurts the child more. But by the way, do not use children as improvised weapons, but it is some kung fu stuff. No, it's not kung fu stuff. Like, kung fu at least has some grace to it. There was no grace in that. There's like no training, no grace, no. I've seen dudes use children as shields when Alpha was want to punch them. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, again, when you work in the hospital and you deal with a lot of injuries and stuff, usually in the hit of the moment, people just don't think. Like, there's a lot of things that people act on instinct. So, like, if the individual isn't used to getting in a fight, and it just happens, like, their brain just stops working, and they will do literally everything in order to protect themselves or to damage the other person. And I feel like this is why certain women do this shit. Like, they just black out. Because they're not used to getting into fights, right? They're getting angry, they're getting upset, and they just pick up the pan with cooking oil and they throw it. So this is exactly how they described it, by the way. They described it as like, oh, I blacked out. I don't remember what happened. And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure you do remember what happened, but like, I don't think you were contemplating the actions, the repercussions, you know? Like, it is what it is. Evolutionary speaking, if someone throws something at you, you're instinctively programmed to try and catch. No. If someone throws something at me, I try to dodge. Like, that's my instinct. It's like, don't get hit by it. I guess, like, maybe if you play a lot of football or handball or something like that, then your instincts may be different because you're training to that. But, yeah. Like, if someone threw a phone at me or a brick or something, I wouldn't try to catch it. I would just try to get out of the way. Well, I guess, hold on, no, it depends the speed, right? Like, if someone throws something towards you, and it's like a small speed thing, like someone throws a tennis ball, like, gently towards you, like, yeah, you try to catch it, but, like, if someone throws it to injure you, then you're trying to get out of the way. Or at least, like, if you can't, to use your hands in order to defend whatever that thing is going to hit. What about the dude that threw the shoe at George Bush? He dodged. Yeah, like, he didn't try to catch the shoe. But, like, I think, like, he threw it fast enough so that George Bush, like, managed to comprehend what's happening. Hold on, let's see. Do you think if Styx would have thrown the shoe, he would have done more damage? Hold on, let me bring up the video. So, George Bush shoe. What are there, 2 shoes or 1? I don't know why people were laughing at this, because I imagine that guy must have been in a lot of pain in order to do something like that, right? Like, you're going in front of the American president, and you risk your safety and your freedom by throwing a shoe, because, like, he immediately got tackled down, so. Alright, what? Oh, here we go. Yeah, he managed to throw both of them before he was tackled. Yeah, he didn't try to catch it, see? I was right. You don't try to catch stuff, you try to dodge it, look. You dodge it and you try to defend your head. He's defending his vulnerable area. What the people in the comments says? He dodged the shoe like it was a direct question. He dodged the shoes like they were crime allegations. Do you think if Styx was there, he would have hit? Like, that's the question. Would Styx Hexenhammer manage to hit George Bush with the shoe? Holy shit, Bistifus! Welcome back. I actually wondered what happened to you. This has nothing to do with the current stream, but I have neglected you. You put on more quality daily content than anyone. Love you, bro. Well, I love you too, Misty Foos. Tell me what you'd like me to cover, and I'll do it more often. Yeah, he was in the debate. Okay, so like going back to Styx, he gave an interview, and he said that he hasn't been charged with any crime yet. Now, I'm not a legal expert in American law, especially when it comes to something like domestic battery. Like that varies from state to state. I don't even know where state. Oh, he was in New Orleans, right? So I don't know how the legal system is like there. Basically, Stick says that if you're suspect, like if you're under investigation, they first book you, like they take you to the police station, they put you in jail, and you gotta get a lawyer, and they don't charge you. Which is kind of weird because I remember when they did that in my country to Andrew Tate, everyone was freaking out. It's like, oh my god, like how can they do this? They didn't charge him. They didn't charge him. So I don't know if this is true or not. It sounds a little bit weird to me, but okay. He's basically confident that he's not going to go to prison. And if this is what he did, right? Like, let's say he threw a phone at someone and gave her a bloody nose. Like, let's assume that this is the case, right? He doesn't want to go into details, so we don't know. But like, going with these events, given the fact that she didn't require hospitalization, given the fact that this would be his first time committing a crime, I don't think he's going to have to go to prison. I think like he may just get a fine and that's it. If he's found guilty, I mean, right? If he's found not guilty, then obviously this conversation doesn't even need to happen. But it's pronounced New Orleans. I see. No, a cell phone, not a house phone. No, a house phone. People don't even have house phones anymore. Like that, and they usually like connected to cords and shit, right? No, like he basically says this is what the rumors are. Sorry, it's not what he said. The rumors are that he thought that the lady was cheating on him, so he took the phone away from her and didn't like to like the person she was talking to or something. So like he threw the phone back at her and hit her in the face, right? So if this is the case, like if this is what happened, I think that yeah, he's going to have to pay a fine, and he may have like an interdiction in getting close to her, right? So like they may get a restraining order. And on top of that, he may actually be forced to give up his guns, like red flag laws and shit. But like, I don't think it's going to affect his YouTube channel. I don't think it's going to do anything to him because like he's already not using AdSense, so he's not going to get demonetized. And I'm looking at his subscribers, like no one seems to care. So the only person that's going to actually end up with a hot potato is the quartering. The reason I'm saying this is because the quartering fired most of like all of his reporters. He actually had reporters and shit, and decided to hire Melanie Mack and Styx. Now, obviously, when you're a content creator and you're caught doing stuff like this, you know you're going to attract trolls. And the quartering usually doesn't react well to criticism. Like, he doesn't really react well to people mocking him and making fun of him. So, like, if he decides to spurg out due to this, or if it causes friction with Melanie Mack, he is the one that's going to end up with the hot potato. I doubt he broke her rib. Yeah, I don't think you can broke someone's ribs by throwing a phone. I mean, it's not out of the realms of possibility, but like I'm looking at Styx, and I don't think he has the arm strength to do something like that. I think like if he actually ended breaking her ribs, like the situation would have been a lot worse. The bail would have been a lot higher, and I don't think like he would be as confident in the case. But the bail was pretty high though, right? Like it was 7,500. Now, if he broke some ribs, I think it would have been at least 10,000. but it was still pretty high for the thing that he did. Again, like this is unless he has like a previous criminal record, but like no one found that or suggested that he does. So yeah, I don't know why it was so high. No, it wasn't a Nokia. If it was a Nokia, I should be dead. Like it's like Thor's hammer, as we discussed. I have been subbed to both V and Styx since 2015. I'm no troll. I even had Smokey as a mod. Why don't I have you anymore? Oh, it's probably because like every year in December I clear all the moderators, right? I take the wrenches away so I can give them back again. Yeah. So he says that the video which came out with the bloody nose and stuff is privated because it's an ongoing lawsuit with multiple people involved, and it's a defamation case. So basically, like he is doubting the validity of that video, which potentially could be true. I mean, again, you know, you see a video on the internet, you can't ask for the whole thing. Like you're just presented a clip, and you don't have the process of discovery. You can't ask questions from the person that uploaded it. You don't have the ability to see if the video is real or not, because the video just shows a woman with a bloody nose and then has sticks in the background. But like you can edit the audio, right? So like you take the audio from a different conversation and you put it over the video. Thank you, Barb. I appreciate it. I'm not saying that the video is fake, by the way, but what I am saying is that there's no way of telling. And this is why I'm just going to wait for the lawsuit to be, sorry, the trial to be over. I won't make any mortal calls. See, like, this is the thing. Like, people keep saying they're making mortal calls. But at the end of the day, the subscribers remain the same. And there's a thing. No, I can't show the video because I may get a copyright strike if I do. Unless it's a Nokia, the damage to the phone should be worse than a crime than the battery of the throw. To be honest, this sounds like a nothing burger. I mean, it's not nice to throw phones at people, you know. And when you have a woman with a bloody nose, it's never a good look. Like, civilized people should avoid that. I've been living with my wife for like 3 years now, and she never had a bloody nose or anything like that. So, like, if I can do it, I'm pretty sure that Styx can as well, and I expect other people to do it. It's not difficult, right? And I do get angry sometimes, you know, like in 3 years we did have some arguments. I did get really upset. Then what I do is I leave the room. Like, why is this such a difficult task to achieve for others? I don't know. Usually the people that moralize you on how to treat women are the worst. I remember, like, I was, when I started my YouTube career, there was this guy, the Skeptic Feminist. And the Skeptic Feminist was, I think, like this Russian dude. And he was living with 2 other women. Like he was having 2 girlfriends, right? And he was going around talking to people about feminism and how you should respect women. And the reason he got popular is because he was one of the only feminists that actually talked to people, right? Because like other feminists was like no platform for bigots, no platform for fascists, that type of shit. And yeah, like one day it turns out that he shot one of those girlfriends. And I think even to this day he's still in prison. Yeah, Russian Deadpool was called. Yeah. And it's like, usually the people that give moral advice on how to treat women end up doing bad things. It's just like a personal observation. But like, the more you live, the more you realize that this is an actual thing. You know, like what I'm trying to say. And this sounds counterintuitive. I don't know why. Obviously, like, no one is in favor of domestic violence, right? But when you and most people will be like, yeah, I disavow, that's horrible, etc. But like, when you have like a crusader, like someone that goes out of its way and they're constantly talking about it, like non-stop, just constantly, over and over and over, they end up committing domestic abuse. And it's not with that just this. It's like America used to have like these family-friendly politicians, right? And they would just constantly talk about gayness and gay and how bad it is and blah, 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 blah. And then it ends up that, oh, there's video recording of them sucking cock, and their entire political career was over. And you also have like people that go on and they talk about anime nonstop, just nonstop about the anime, and then it turns out that they have like CPU on their computer and they got arrested. And it's like, again, like, there are things that I'm not saying like people shouldn't be against them, but when they dedicate their entire life, or at least like a major part of their day, to nonstop talking about the thing, more often than not, it turns out that those people are guilty of the same shit. You know, so in the case of Skeptic Feminist, like, he was talking about respecting women so often. Like, he would dedicate a big chunk of his day, every day, 7 days a week, just talking about, like, how you need to treat women and how you need to be respectful, etc., etc., etc. And then it turns out that, oh, now he's arrested for shooting one of his girlfriends, right? The same thing with Vosh. Like, Vosh is talking against anime and he's judging people and he's moralizing, like, more than normal, right? Like, more than the average person does. And then he does the stream accident where it's revealed that he is a Nazi, right? According to him, because apparently Nazis were watching that. And it's like, okay. It's always what they fear getting out is they are loudest the most. I don't know what's happening, like what is the psychological explanation for it, but I have seen it with different things, right? Like someone that's an anti-racist and they constantly just talk about how you need to stop being a racist and they lecture you about white privilege and all that shit. And then it's revealed that they used to drop N-bombs and they were like more racist than you could have ever been. It's, again, like, it's not like for a specific crime, and it's not like people shouldn't be against some things, but when that person is dedicating way too much energy in order to fight against that, then it becomes sus. Sargon made a great video going over male feminists and their convictions. Yeah, like, that was the thing, right? Like, you had all the male feminists that told you how to be respectful to women, and they would get convicted for all sorts of sex crimes. And it's like, wow, that's fascinating. It's kind of like the village priest that ends up being a drunk and goes to the whorehouse. Like, that was a thing in medieval society. But going back to Styx, yeah, I don't think it's going to influence his career. It is a bad look, of course, and it's going to be a stain on his public record, because as a content creator, people will always talk about it, and they will always remember it. But I don't think, like, it's going to impact his ability of networking, of doing collab. Well, actually, the thing with him is that he doesn't usually do interviews and collabs, right? So, yeah, it's going to be, like, if he doesn't get convicted, it's going to be forgotten. That's my prediction. Nick Fuentes and the Cat Boys, I haven't followed that, but I did hear about it. Like, enough people were laughing about it. And it's like, okay, so, like, you go from, I guess he had a roommate, and he was making sure that the roommate doesn't masturbate or something with a black light. Like, that was a major controversy at the time. And then, you know, like, it turns out that people are accusing him of fraternizing with cat boys and shit. And it's like, okay, yeah. I mean, Styx needs to quit drinking. Yeah, no, like, the thing with the groping on the stream, that was very disturbing. But if the woman didn't press charges, I guess, like, it's not a... it depends on the law, right? In my country, for instance, there are certain crimes that the woman requires to press charges. Like, for instance, in the case of rape, right? Like, the difference between consensual and rape is the lack of consent. So the only person that knows if they gave consent or not is the alleged victim. So, like, if the person doesn't press charges, then they consented, right? And if they do press charges, then they didn't. So if you grope someone on a stream in my country, like, that person would have to press charges. I don't know how the law is, because I heard in other places it's not like this, so I find it, like, really weird. It's like, if a person likes role playing, for instance, right, and they like pretending that they're assaulted or something, like maybe they have like some sick fantasies or whatever, but it's like all make believe, it's all role play, and like someone sees it and they report it as rape, and the other person's like, no, wait, we consented, like we're fine, we had the safe word. Like what happens? Like do the authorities just press charges anyway? It's kind of weird. This actually happened, I think, at the university. Yeah, so it may be the case in America, or was it in Canada? I don't know. It was like an English-speaking nation. And the thing was, like, at a university, there was like this assistant professor. She was very young, and she had a relationship with one of the football players. But it was a bad look because her as a teacher fraternizing with the student, it could jeopardize her career. So like she told about this to one of her friends, and her friend was like, no, listen, you got raped. And she's like, no, I didn't. It was consensual. And it's like, no, you did. And she goes and presses a complaint to the administrative body at the university. So, like, the professors, like, this was, like, during the peak of feminism. So the professors use the Title IX and they do an investigation. And they eventually kick that football player off the campus. And they ruined the guy's life. And the woman was like, but I like, it was consensual. Like, I wanted this. Like, it right? And they didn't listen to her. So, that was, like, a paralegal thing. Like, it didn't go to court. But it was, like, so bizarre. It's like... In college, whoever cries first wins. I mean, it makes sense, right? Because the university professors, like, they don't have any training in law. They don't know how to gather evidence. They can't do discovery. Like, they don't know how to interrogate a witness. They don't know how to... do forensics. It makes no fucking sense why you'd allow university professors to handle these types of crimes. But so like if something gets stolen, right, they call the cops. But if someone gets sexually assaulted, they call the university professor. It's so fucking bizarre. Just started watching what's going on. Styx gave an interview where he basically said that nothing happened. He doesn't expect to get charged. And he expects to return to his home. And the video that was released is during a trial, so he can't talk about it. But he basically like tried to insinuate that it's a defamation thing. The university doesn't have a law professor. It's like, first of all, I don't know if the law professor are actually the ones that are handling these types of investigations. Because usually like they hire people from gender studies. And secondly, just because you know, like knowing the law doesn't make you a criminal investigator, right? Like, okay, you know the legislation and you know how to interpret it. How do you run an interview with the suspect? How do you lift fingerprints? How do you know how to identify if the stains of biological fluid that you found actually belongs to the victim or actually belongs to the perpetrator or not, right? Like, this is why you call the cops. Like, they're the only ones that have the ability to deal with this shit. They're not like a law professor. And not to mention, by the way, like, the saying that those who can't do teach is more often than not true. It's like, okay, he's a law professor, so fucking what? Like, that doesn't necessarily mean he has experience in the court. Doesn't mean that he actually knows how to prosecute someone. He just knows the theory. Like, fine. Yeah, the concept of campus police is really dumb in my opinion. And I think it's an American thing, right? Like, Eastern Europe doesn't have that shit. Campus police. What the fuck is that? Campus police. The whole concept of campus life is incredibly stupid. This is why universities cost so much, is because Americans want the campus life. It's like, to just go and learn your shit and get the fuck out and start being a productive member of society. Fucking campus life, so you can party instead of going to exams. Wow. Brilliant invention. Capsule is a criminal investigator, really? It's interesting. Glorified mall cops. Even another thing, like mall cop. Isn't that just like mall security? Do they have even the ability to restrain people? I think they do, right? Like if it's an ongoing crime, like if it's happening right there. But like, yeah, it's mall security. It shouldn't be called a mall cop. It's the freshmen that mostly do that. Not from my experience. I have seen usually rich students do that, right? So, like, if you're a poor student, like coming from impoverished backgrounds, at least here in Eastern Europe, you know that this is your only chance to make it in life. Like, divinity has thrown you a lifeline. You're coming from really poor roots, and your only chance to actually be wealthy and have a good life is if you study. And if you fuck it up, you fuck it up forever, right? So, like, most students that are from impoverished backgrounds, they study really hard. Meanwhile, the rich kids, they're like, oh, well, you know, if I fail the year, mommy and daddy will just pay me for another. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Maybe mommy and daddy will bribe the professor or some shit. And they're the ones that make it ahead. Sorry, they're the ones that party a lot, right? And the problem with this is that if you don't study, like, let's say you have like other alternatives, like you're either bribing the professor, or if you're a woman, you're bribing the professor in a different way. Maybe you know how to cheat very well at exams. But the problem is, like, eventually you run into the professor that doesn't take bribes, or it's an old lady, and if you're a woman, you have no power over her. And you may actually end up with a professor that knows the ways that students cheat. So, like, he has, like, really strong countermeasures. And if you didn't study up till that point, you're fucked. Like, you really are fucked. Because a lot of things in med school, they require that you know what was taught in the previous year. So, like, if you don't have the basis, you can't study the other thing, right? So, like, if you skipped on the third year and you just never studied, and you never studied in the fourth year as well, you end up in the fifth year, and there may be a subject that requires that you at least know the basics from the year 3 to 4, and you just can't study it. Like, you're going to have to memorize it like the phone book. If you are from a different state, your bail will always be high. Okay, so that would explain it, because I was confused. It's like, okay, so if he just threw the phone at her, and he doesn't have a previous criminal record, like he didn't hospitalize her or anything, why is the bail so high? And I was thinking, like, maybe he actually did some damage to her, you know, like maybe she did end up in the hospital. But if it's like he's from another state and it's a flight risk, then that makes sense. It's a flight risk, like Andrew Tate. By the way, like they still haven't said anything about Tate. I'm watching the news every day. Like I'm trying to find out if there's anything else coming up, but no. Okay, so Hasan Piker is trying to cancel Asmongold. Let's talk about this. Like, this is more interesting.
If you want to consider a genocide as a systematic killing of a group of people, they have genocide built into Sharia law right now.
Oh, so he's talking about the Palestinians. I mean, there are videos coming from Hamas TV with a Mickey Mouse called Farfour and educating children in hating Jewish people. So what Asmongold is saying doesn't sound good, but he can back it up with that, and I would like to see Hasan Piker explain it. And he usually they explain it's like, well, yeah, but like it's fine. And I don't think it is. Like if you want people to care, you need to have the moral high ground. And if you don't have the moral high ground, like the way that I think about this whole conflict is like this, right? There have been several terrorist attacks in Europe in the last couple of years. How many times did people from Palestine show solidarity with the people in Europe? Has there been a single case? And if the answer is no, then why is it that we're expected to show solidarity now? I'm not the one doing anything in the Middle East, right? Like, my family isn't there. I'm not connected to that. I don't care either way. It's not that it's generally like it's a conflict that's so far away from me that I feel exactly the same way how they feel about the conflicts that happen in Europe. Right? Like, if there was like some level of solidarity, If there was a level of like when something bad happens in Europe, you see people in the Middle East being like, "That's horrible. We're going to change our avatars and raise the French flag, and you know we vehemently condemn, and this is not what we stand for, and blah blah blah." If I were to see that, I think people would have cared a little bit more. But at this level, it's just like people pretending to care. I mean, Hasan Piker has an actual terrorist on his stream. I don't think he's in the moral high ground to talk about Asmongold. Oh, Asmongold said things that are bad. Yeah, okay, you had a terrorist on your stream. Like, you shifted that 6 mana and played the victory card. I don't think Asmongold can compete with that level.
So no, I'm not going to cry a fucking river when people who have genocide that's baked into their laws are getting genocided. I don't give a fuck. They're terrible people. It's not even a question. It's crazy that people don't see it that way.
The thing is, like, you're not supposed to have your personal opinions, I guess. It's like, okay, maybe they're harsh. But Asmongold isn't the one in the Middle East doing anything, right? It's just his take on the issue. Oh, it's a mean take. Well, why can't he have mean takes? No, like, I generally do not care about the Middle Eastern conflict. The only time I care is, like, if it can expand and it gets here. Then, yeah, I would care, right? Like, for instance, Iran has nuclear weapons. Like, that has the potential of affecting me. But again, if they don't care about stuff that's happening here, why is it that we need to care about the stuff that's happening there? And of course, you know, more than that, I don't want my government funding it. Like, Romania is not a rich country, so, like, thankfully, we're not sending any money to that area. But if I was in America, the only reason I would care is, like, can we stop sending money there? Like, at least if they're fighting each other, like, not with my taxpayer. Like, there was, like, the thing where, you had, like, I don't even know if it happened or not, but, like, this was the argument that, the water pipes from Palestine was taken out by Hamas, and they filled them with powder and made them into rockets and fired them at Israel, and the Iron Dome from Israel managed to take them out. So basically, it was American taxpayer money on both sides, right? Like, the American taxpayer money, which got the pipes, were then taken away, and they were made into rockets, and they were fired at Israel, which used the American taxpayer money to fire rockets. It's like, come on. It's fucking ridiculous. You're telling me, like, a working class lad that goes to the wage cage for 12 hours a day, and then the government takes a huge chunk of his money to fund both sides in the Middle East? Well, what does the guy get? You know, like, why are you taking his money and funding that shit?
They'd be doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, if you took the technology that Israel has, right? You take all the technology, all the weapons, everything, and you give it to the Palestine, what do you think would happen? Do you think they would show clemency? Do you think they would be like, well, you know, like, we can't go this far?
And how much did they kill? As many as they can. They're not able to kill as many people as Israel because they don't have as many bombs and as many weapons. But if they did, they'd be doing the same thing.
I can't disagree with this. And I wonder if Hasan would think, no, they would show restraint. Right? No, seriously, like, what do you think would happen if you take all the weapons from Israel and give them to the Palestinians, right? And the Palestinians, obviously, you know, they would rise up and they would, you know, fight the military. But, like, after they defeat the military is the question, right? So they defeated IDF, they defeated everything. How do you think they would behave with the population, with the civilians? And this is why I don't care. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong. It's like, it's just not in my radar. Like, they've been fighting before I was born. They're fighting while I'm alive. They will be fighting after I'm dead. And even if I care, like, this is the thing that really annoys me. Let's say that I cared really, really hard about this. Like, I was really involved in caring. It doesn't change anything. Even if every single Romanian would care, we would be like in Attack on Titan, like the Eldians, controlled by that thing, you know, and all of us would care. It wouldn't change anything. But the only thing it would change is how people react to you on Twitter, right? Like, if you put a Palestinian flag and you say you care, you're a good person even if you bring a terrorist on stream. If you say you don't care, you're an awful human being and you need to be canceled. And it seems so fucking childish, doesn't it? It seems like a joke to me. It's like you're treating an actual conflict with people dying as if it's a football game. And you know, like, no, seriously, like, our parents used to get involved in football. And it was like, oh, it's Manchester United versus someone else. And then they would actually have fights. Like, they had hooligans on the street beating each other up over their football team. And now football isn't popular. And instead, people are using foreign conflicts and like, oh, what flags do you have in your bio? Oh, is it?
That's it. Just takes enough. That's right. These people are not your allies. They are not the same as us. They come from an inferior culture that is horrible. It kills people for their identity, and it is directly antithetical to everything Western values stand for, and it is an inferior culture in all ways.
So this is why a lot of people were upset over what he said. But again, if you have a Mickey Mouse cartoon called Farfour, and the entire cartoon is to teach children to hate Jewish people, and it has like Farfour getting killed by Jewish people, like this is on their television, right? If the punishment for being LGBT is death is the sentence, are you saying that this culture is equal to the Western culture? So like if people in the West would start behaving like that, and they would act like that, you'd be fine, because you'd be like, well, it's just like a little bit different, but like at the end of the day, we can't call it worse than what we have. No one wants to actually interact with what Asmongold is saying. Like, maybe he's not using the correct words, or like, but I would like to hear the rebuttal. And usually the rebuttal is like, well, they are oppressed, so therefore. And it's like, okay, so if they manage to like fight their oppressors, and again, you know, they manage to take out the military, right? Because like engaging in active combat is something that's permissible. But like after they take over the military and they would manage to like govern the area, what do you think they would do? And be honest with yourself, right? Will they have like LGBT rights and fly the LGBT flag, Hasan? Because I know you care about that. This is why I'm bringing it up. Do you think they would be like, oh, well, we're going to have like a one-party state solution now, and yeah. But no, we gotta care. I would love to see a debate between Hasan and Asmongold. I've come for the documents, Farfour. Actually, you know that. Like, they would have, like, every single month, they would have, like, a new character. They would have, like, a bee, I think, and then it was, like, Farfour, and then, like, another one. And they would all get killed. In order to traumatize the children. And it's like, I'm sorry, but, like, I understand that the situation is complex, right? Like, I understand that the people in Gaza are being in the world's largest prison, as they call it, right? But like, there is a reason, a historical one. It's like, why is Egypt not allowing them to leave? Why don't people talk about how the last time they were allowed to get refuge in a nation state, they started forming Islamo-Marxist cells, and they assassinated the prime minister. You know, and again, it's like, I don't understand. It's like Game of Thrones over there, you know? Just because, like, now House Lannister is being taken out by House Bolton, doesn't mean that the Boltons are the good guys, you know? Doesn't mean that the Lannisters are... It means that it's over there. And even if I care about it, it doesn't change anything. And from a moral standpoint, I can't seem to care. Yeah, I saw the videos with the people that went into Israel and started shooting civilians, started shooting old people. And the videos came from the people doing the crime. Like, they were recording it on GoPro cameras, and they were uploading it on Twitter as if they're proud of it. And you want me to say, yeah, these people have the moral superiority? I don't care. We don't behave like this in Europe. And when something bad happens in Europe, none of them care. So, like, okay, well, I think this is the correct way of moving forward. Bad stuff happens here, you guys don't care. Bad stuff happens there, we don't care. And about Israel. Okay, Israel is like, well, we can't... They're basically saying, we can't have one-state solution because it would be bad for us, right? So like we're not going to take in Palestinian refugees because it would cause social conflict. So instead, we're going to deport them to Europe, or we're going to send them to Canada. And it's like, okay, so you're saying that they're bad enough for Israel, but they're good enough for Canada? What the fuck are you doing? And it's like, okay, well, I don't care about them either. He's using the correct word, says Magov. No, I'm trying to talk as if I was talking to a leftist. I can't pronounce the name, but my South Korean friend. V, can you make a video about this video addressing how feminism affected in Korean culture? No, I just no. I usually talk about like current events, and like in order to read about something like this, because you need to understand, I need to make a video game, I need to make 4 videos a day, and it's usually about current events. Last time I made a video about the Great Leap Forward, I had to study for like 2 weeks in order to make sure that the video is accurate and get all of the footage and do the editing, and it's like a really big thing. If you can show me like one thing that happened in Korea, maybe I can talk about it. Usually it's the language barrier that makes me not want to address stuff that's happening in Asia. But every now and then, if it's something big, like the time a gaming studio was kicking out their feminists because they were injecting their ideology in the game, yeah, I'll talk about that, because that's interesting and relevant. But like regarding about feminism in Korean culture, I mean, what else is there to say? It's a little bit worse, I think, than in American culture, but in one way, you guys fought back. Like, consumers didn't put up with the shit, right? If a company was hiring activists that were actively against their consumer base and was, like, chastising their consumer base, the consumers wouldn't buy the product. So, in a way, like, you guys managed to hold back yourselves, which is something that the West didn't do. Even Dev does research videos. Yes, but Dev doesn't upload like 4 videos a day. He's a different type of channel than I am. And Dev watches a lot of Destiny. Like, I would have to watch Destiny as well in order to get the deviant takes. I wouldn't say that Eastern Europe has the same respect for life that Western Europe does. It depends what you mean by Eastern Europe. Like, if you're talking about Poland, if you're talking about Hungary, then I think like they do have respect for life. I think that Romanians have respect for life. But you know, I think a lot of people are looking at World War II and what happened with the Russians. Now this is actually easy to explain. When World War II happened, Germany and the Allies, like Germany and Britain, they signed international treaties on how to conduct warfare in a more humane way. That doesn't mean that war is humane, but it means like, okay, don't mess with civilians. If someone surrenders, don't shoot them. You know, that type of shit. And for the most part, some of the contracts were actually followed, both by the Allies and the Germans. Like, for instance, the Knights in the Sky was a thing where you weren't supposed to shoot a person that's parachuting. Like, the Germans respected that. The Allies respected that. They also did violations, like the bombings of Dresden and the bombings of London. Like, those were considered war crimes. But all in all, the Western Front was where you wanted to be. Like, if you were in World War II and you have to be somewhere, you wanted to be on the Western Front. In the Eastern Front, the Russians didn't sign any international treaties. So, like, the concept of a war crime was differently defined. It's almost like something didn't exist, right? And when you take into account that the Russians viewed the Germans as allies because of the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, and like they invaded Poland together, and then Germany invading Russia in Operation Barbarossa was viewed as a betrayal, and the fact that they were going and conquering territory made the Russians do terror tactics against them. And the problem with this is that when you do terror tactics against someone, you get them back. So the war became a lot more dehumanized on the Eastern Front than it was on the Western Front. So much so that members of the SS that were in the Eastern Front, when they were deployed in the Western Front, they would commit the same atrocities there. So like the idea again, like people from the West, like they have a different respect for life than people in the East. That just gets debunked by the fact that when you take a soldier from the West and you deploy him in the East, and then you take him back and you put him in the West, he does commit the same war crimes and the same atrocities. It goes to show that it's mostly like atrocities beget atrocities. So like this is the reason that you even have these international conventions to try and make war more humane. It's not because you want to have the moral high ground, but it's mostly because the way you treat your enemies is the way that you will be treated if you're in a situation where you're taken as a prisoner of war. What are my thoughts on the birth rate? South Korea apparently has 0.7 birth rate, which probably what the other guy was referring to. The problem with the birth rates is that it destroys the welfare system. If it wasn't the welfare system, no one would give a fuck about the birth rates. But like the idea is like this, right? Like if you're an elderly person and you can't work anymore, like you're 75, normally it should be your kids that take care of you, right? Like you raise like 5 or 6 kids and you hope that at least 2 or 3 of them will give a shit about you when you're old. If you have a welfare state, it's like, okay, well, the government will take care of me. And the problem with this is that if everyone thinks this way and no one has kids, well, the government doesn't actually produce wealth. The government takes money from some people and gives it to others. And the people that produce are the young people, right? Like they not only have jobs and pay taxes, but they also fund the economy by going clubbing and buying expensive cars and television and shit. Old people don't do that. Old people usually consume. They go to the public healthcare system. They require medicine. They require things. So if you have a situation where you got an aging population and not enough young people to work, well, then you have the case where people are freaking out about the birth rates. But if you didn't have welfare, it's like, okay, well, people are going to have kids now, this generation, and the next generation, people are going to be poor and they're going to have more kids. And it's like a wave. It's how human history actually functions, because you can't have a system where every generation has exponentially more kids. That like humans would become like a cancer on earth. Like eventually you run out of resources, right? Like you just can't have like, okay, the next generation more and more and more. I'm not an anti-natalist or an anti-humanist. I'm just like, let nature take its course and let people fuck how they want to fuck. Do not bring like massive migration into a place just because people aren't fucking, right? Just ride the wave. And I mean, seriously, like the idea of like bringing other people, like imagine if you have a house, right? And you choose not to have kids and you're an elderly person and the mayor comes in and brings you like 5 homeless people and it's like, well, it's good for your household economy. Yeah, but it's my house. No, listen. Like you only have a single wage and you didn't have any kids, so now you're an old woman with 5 cats and you're only making this amount a month. So if we bring 5 homeless people in, once they get cleaned up, once they take a shower and they get the ropes, like they're going to have jobs and they're going to contribute to your household. So it's good for your household's economy. Like, does that make any sense? Is that normal, right? So I don't agree with that take either. What are your thoughts? Oh, I already talked about birth rates. But it's my house. No. It's not your house. It's an economic zone, right? In fact, we're saving the house. This is good for your house because if you happen to not make money, right, like your house is going to end up in disrepair and no one is going to fix it. But if you have like 5 homeless people in and they get jobs, then they're going to use the money to fix your house. So it's actually really amazing for your house. Uriah of the house right? Well, it's really good for the house of right, especially if there's no more rights left in the house of right. The idea that people only care about birth rates because of welfare is delusional. No, I'm saying that if you didn't have welfare, you wouldn't have the birth rate problem. Because if you didn't have welfare, people would know, okay, but when I'm going old, like no one is going to take care of me. So like you have the incentive to have kids. Like there's no other way around it. But if you're thinking, oh, well, when I get old, I'll just have the government take care of me, that's a different problem. point of the video was that Korean feminists cheering the downfall of their society and not having kids because they do not have enough stuff from man. I think that the main issue regarding this is education. Like, if you look in America, I actually had this conversation with the German and I disagreed with him. But basically, he was saying that women having a right to vote is a problem. And I'm like, no, like, that's a problem in America, right? Like, women usually vote for more welfare and shit. But if you look in Europe, men and women vote kind of the same. Like, there's no discrepancy between the gender. Maybe it's like 2 or 3 percentages. But, like, overall, men and women vote the same. It's educated people that vote for left-leaning shit. And it's usually people that go to academia, people that go to gender studies, people that go to these places that end up hating their nation state. They end up hating the culture they're in. They want to be unburdened by what has been. Which, by the way, is a Marxist thing. I don't know if people are aware of that. But it's like the four alls that have to go, right? Is what China did. They're homeless because they're lazy. Oh my goodness. There's a lot of reasons why people get homeless. Again, like in the hospital, I talk to homeless people. There's different cases, right? So like you can have the thing where a person is just misfortunate and they lose their job, they can't pay the bills, so they end up being homeless. There's people that get homeless because there's a fire and it burned down their house. There's people being homeless because they're old and their family kicked them out. But then there's also other reasons, right? There's substance abuse. There's mental illness. Usually it's not like someone is homeless because he is lazy. Like, if you know you're going to lose your house, most people do try to do something. And the thing with substance abuse, it's the question of which came first, the chicken or the egg, because there's a lot of people that end up being homeless, and then they resort to drugs and alcohol. Because if you think about it, like, put yourself in the position, like, let's say your house burns down. Like, try to imagine this, right? You have no relatives, no one to help you, and your house burns down, and now you're on the street. And that's your life. Like, you don't know what to do, right? There's no manual for this, but, like, you have no home. It's like you're on the street. A lot of people end up drinking. Because it makes the day pass quicker, right? Like, there's nothing to do. Like, in fact, everyone looks down at you. Everyone looks at you with disdain because you're homeless now, right? So, like, the fact that some of them are doing drugs or drinking, I can't blame them. But it's also the opposite way, right? Like, you can have someone that has a house. You can have someone that has a job. And they do start drinking and taking drugs. And they end up being homeless. So, like, that's a different situation. They're both addicts now. They're both drinkers, right? But, like, with one of them, I could blame them, while the other one, not so much. Americans have a stereotype that European men are being feminine. Oh, I have seen a lot of feminine American men, so I can't say that's the case. Addiction is a choice. Yeah, but like if you think that you're out on the streets and you have no more future, I can see why some people just don't care anymore. Boo-hoo, get out and work. Well, President-elect, I would actually encourage you to do this experiment, right? Try and get a job without having an address, right? So like if you're homeless, every single resume is going to ask for a number, like a personal number and an address. Now, if you don't have an address and you don't have a home, you're going to quickly find out that no one wants to hire you. Now, I'm pretty sure, you can armchair this conversation and just say, oh, well, I would such and such, and I know how to... There was a show that actually had, like, rich people trying to be homeless and seeing if they can do it. And some of them did, by the way, right? Which is why I believe that the show wasn't just propaganda. Like, some of the rich people managed to turn their life around from being homeless. But other people found out that, well, being homeless actually has a couple of difficulties that they didn't think. Like, for instance, some guy trying to stab them. Or other people trying to extort them. Like, you have no protections. You're homeless. People that were chasing them. Like, you can't beg here because this is our turf, right? Like all of a sudden you realize you're very vulnerable to this type of thing. But there's also the difficulty that no one wanted to hire them. Like, they wanted to work, but it's like, okay, well, what is your address? It's like, well, I don't know. Oh, I see. And then there's like different types of homeless, because you can be homeless and have a car, and that's a big advantage, or you can be homeless and have nothing, and that's a major disadvantage. You can be homeless and have friends, you know, you can couch surf, or you can be homeless and not. And it's also like the way you present yourself, how you look. Like, if you're a more handsome individual, if you're well built, if you're young, then you have an advantage over someone that's 65. It's a complex issue. It's easy to simplify it. It can be. It's usually like from a case-to-case basis. Like, you got to talk about the person and talk about his condition, rather than like cast a broad statement. Because if you cast a broad statement, I mean, it depends. Like, if you're in California, I can tell you what the problem is. But if you're in another country where the number of homeless people isn't that high, then it depends. And by the way, like, you can't fix homelessness by buying people houses. Like, that's another thing, right? The left believes, it's kind of counterintuitive, because you're thinking like, okay, well, if we buy them houses, there's no more homeless. No. If you buy them houses, if they're addicts and they can't work, or if they're mentally insane and they can't function in society, they're going to end up back on the streets because they can't pay the rent, they can't pay the mortgage, they can't pay, right? They can't pay the utilities. Like, there was a case, and I'll end the stream with this, and I talked about it because it really impressed me. In Romania, the guy with the horse, right? Like, during the pandemic, it was citywide lockdown, streets were empty, and this guy with the horse manages to catch the attention of the police, and they find out that he was actually going to the hospital to see his pregnant wife, and he had no other means of transportation. So, like, the cops take him there, and he gains the attention of the nation, and people start donating to him, and there's even this K1 fighter that hires him as a bodyguard and gives him a house. And basically now he's got like this nice house, a 2-room house, and he's got a new car and everything, right? And he's got a job. And it took him like 2 or 3 months to piss it all away. He was back into the shack that they came out from, started drinking again. He did keep the car, sold the original house, squandered the money, didn't show up to work. And it's like, yeah, I mean, there are certain people that if they're homeless, right, even if you give them stuff, they're not going to be able to swing it back around. And then there's other types of people that I met. There was this guy that I interviewed on my channel back in 2016 because he was homeless, and it like really attracted my interest. It's like I never spoke with a homeless person before, and it does sound something that can happen to anyone. You know, like your house can catch fire, or there can be an earthquake or some shit, and you can end up homeless. So like, I interviewed him, and he managed to like get back on track because like a friend of him helped him out, and he couch surfed. But he's been homeless for like 3 years, and it was like a very gut-wrenching story. And now I find out that he managed to land a job at a government like years later, and he's making more money than me. So like there's 2 types of people. Like there's you know, like people that can turn it around, and it does take a lot of luck. It takes willpower. It takes like the ability not to do drugs and substance abuse. We helped a buy a house and get a job. Turned out he preferred living under bridges. There were cases where people were beggars, and they were really good at begging. Like, apparently there's a skill in begging. Like, you need to know where to go. You need to know what to do, what story to have. There was like a guy that was making like thousands of dollars out of begging, and he actually managed to buy himself a house, and he was still begging. And even after he didn't need the money because he was making a lot of wealth, he still begged because he liked begging. It's like, it's what he likes to do. And it's like, wow, okay. Obviously, these people are the exception. I don't think like there's more than him in the world that thinks like that, but Well, I don't think he paid taxes. Like, it would be funny if he actually paid taxes. Like, do you have a company like beg.com or something? We call that a con man. I mean, kinda, I guess. Like, what exactly is he conning? You see a person asking you for money. Like, he's not saying that he's poor. Right? So, like, if you give him money, that's on you. There's a begging meta. And they make more money than a lot of entry-level jobs. Yeah. I heard that. Oh, Rosa is raiding me. Why am I always getting raided when I'm about to stop streaming? Damn it. Rosa, you chose the wrong raiding target. I'm actually about to go. But, hey, Rosa, hope you're doing well. Haven't watched your streams in a while, so I guess I need to catch up again. Thank you for the raid, but guys, if you're here from Rosa, I'm sorry. I was just about to leave. My phone battery is dying. So,